The galaxy needed 1,000 lawmen. They just got one, and he was enough. Marshal Bravestarr. Today, we talk about the classic 1980s series Bravestarr. I will talk about the action figures, the TV series, and the movie. In today's podcast, that was recorded February the 3rd, 2020. Okay, welcome to another podcast. This one's going to kind of be all over the place, people, but that's the way it is when I'm not going off a script. I just come up with something and I'm like, I'm going to talk about it. So let's get this show on the road. What I'm going to talk about today is a series that aired starting in 1987. And I'm going to give you some little tidbits and a bunch of information about Bravestarr, which there's more information than I thought that I could find actually on this series. But I've found some little things that I didn't know about, and we're going to be talking about them today. Most of this information, some's coming from my head, some's coming from online sources. But Bravestarr, it was like a Western series, but it was set in space. And it aired from September of 87 to February of 1988 in syndication, which means that there were 65 episodes of the show. Because back then, they wanted to air the shows like 5 to 6 days a week, so they made all the shows, and that's the way they aired them. Normally, they would air the first episode on a Saturday, and then that episode would play later in the week or whatever. They wanted to do it so that they could have a bunch of episodes at their disposal so that they could show them. Bravestarr was the last animated series produced by Filmation and Group W Productions to be broadcast before Filmation shut down in 1989. Well, Filmation was responsible for bringing Fat Albert to TV and Black Star. They had a Ghostbusters cartoon that made Columbia Pictures want to sue them, even though they created Ghostbusters first in a live-action series in the 70s. We're the Ghostbusters. I'm Tracy. And this is Kong, or whatever. Something along that lines was a theme song. And it was basically about a group of Ghostbusters, two guys, but they had a gorilla. Well, Filmation made that in the 80s in an animated form. And Columbia Pictures was like trying to sue them and stuff over something that they done and created. Also, you had some other Filmation series that were good throughout the 70s and the 80s. Some was like Batman. There was a Star Trek animated series made by Filmation. So Filmation was great animation, and it was sad to see that they had to close their doors after this. I mean, they created He-Man and She-Ra for one. And then this was like their swan song, Bravestarr. It was a great little series. I don't know why it had to end the way it did. And anyway, Bravestarr ran from, like I said, September 1987 to February 88. Well, in 1988, they made a movie that was released March 18th of 1988. It was based on the television series and Mattel's action figures of the same name. Mattel made action figures based off this show too, as well as other toys and play sets and stuff. Now, this is about the movie. The film tells the story of the original discovery of carium, a fictional ore that serves as the main plot element of the TV series, and how the galactic Marshal Bravestarr came to battle Tex Hex, a wanted outlaw, and his master, Stampede, an evil spirit in the form of a bull skull on the planet of New Texas. It also introduces his allies, JB, a female judge, 3030, his talking horse who can become bipedal and fight on his own, which means he can like change into like where he can walk like a human and stuff. Or he can be in a normal horse mode. Then there was Deputy Fuzz, one of the prairie people, the original indigenous people of New Texas, which means the prairie people, they lived on the prairie. They were small-like creatures. They lived in holes and caves and stuff. And they was the original people there on the planet of New Texas. And the shaman, Bravestarr's mentor, who helps him discover his animal-based powers. Okay, now, here's the thing about the movie. At the beginning of it, the shaman is on a spaceship, and he's leaving like his planet because it's been destroyed, and Bravestarr and him are like the last of their people. And according to one thing I found, see, when they wrote a series in the 80s, they'd have like a series Bible that outlined like the characters, plots, all the elements, you know, that they would use in the series. So, in the series Bible, Bravestarr was said to be the last of his tribe, the Martian Redhawks. His powers were centered around an amulet upon his wrist, a relic of his people. Well, in the series, Shaman knows that the ship's going to crash, so he breaks the amulet in two and puts half of it around Bravestarr's neck so that Bravestarr will know him when he sees him again. So that is one thing that was changed. The amulet let him also talk to animals. Well, he don't talk to animals in the series, to my knowledge. Every creature that he talks to or whatever is like a normal creature that you can talk to anyway. He was apparently going to use his optovisor more or some sort of visor anyway, shows up in a large chunk of the concept art, as well as his star shield. Now, I don't remember a star shield in there, but I remember he did have that visor that came down to where he could see like way off and stuff like that. So they did retain that. The Bible also calls him Marshall Starr once or twice as if it were his last name. So that gives us something to think about. Is his first name Brave, last name Starr, or is he just known as Bravestarr? They never like really gave him a name, just called him Bravestarr. Well, anyway, the idea of Bravestarr began with Tex Hex, his chief adversary. Tex Hex was created by Filmation's staff artist in 1984 during the development of Filmation's Ghostbusters, which is what I was talking about earlier about the monkey and stuff. Then Lou Scheimer found the character fascinating and pulled Tex Hex from the Ghostbusters cast. He asked Arthur Nettle, Filmation's vice president for creative affairs, and art director John Grusida, or something, I can't really read that name, to develop a science fiction western around the character. As the concept took shape, staff writer Bob Ford finished out the Writer's Guide, which was the series Bible, and eventually co-wrote the feature film script for Bravestarr the Legend with writer Steve Hayes. Well, the episodes are like science fiction and western, like all mixed matched together. And it is set in the 23rd century. And this planet's like got all these different kinds of cultures and people. And it's like a desert planet, so they called it New Texas. There was like many episodes in this series that were like great storytelling episodes. But one that stood out was an episode called The Price. In that episode, there was a boy that was addicted to a drug called Spin, which it was like you was hitting like LSD or some kind of hallucination drugs or whatever, and he become addicted to it and he dies of an overdose. Now imagine today if SpongeBob found out that Patrick was a dope addict and Patrick died. You won't see that on TV today. You cannot do that on TV today. They could not make episodes like this like they did in the 80s. I mean, there was like a bunch of anti-drug stuff in the 80s. You had cartoon all-stars to the rescue with Porky Pig and Michelangelo and stuff trying to keep this kid off drugs. And you had a Flintstones Kids Just Say No drug special. And then you had this episode of Bravestarr. Well, here's some little points of interest on the planet. There's a fort called Fort Carrium, which is a mechanized town capable of armoring itself. And that's where Bravestarr works out of Fort Carrium. I mean, with Westerns, you had the fort. You got to hold down the fort. So they got the Fort Carrium. There's a mountain where the shaman lives. It's known as Star Peak. And it conceals the spacecraft in which he arrived on New Texas atop a Carrium deposit. Now, Carrium is really like an expensive mineral that everybody wants. And that's why all the outlaws come to New Texas to start with. In the movie, it's revealed that I think his name was Angus McBride and Hex, Tex Hex, but he was just called Tex then, had came to the planet of New Texas with Scuzz, which was Fuzz's uncle, who's a bad guy. He's a prairie person that smokes cigars all the time. And they were forcing the prairie people to load the ship up with Carrium. Well, Stampede sees how evil that Tex Hex is, so when the ship crashes due to overloading of the Carrium, Tex Hex and Scuzz are dead. Alright? So yeah, you're going to have all these Christian groups up in arms about, hey, these people are dead. This guy's bringing them back like they're Jesus Christ. Well, basically, Stampede brings them back, and when he brings them back, they are endowed with evil powers, and Tex decides he's going to form a group of people that is just like him. So, that's what he does. He goes out and he finds all of the bad people on the planet. He finds Cactus Head, a short robot with a cactus-shaped headpiece equipped with 2 energy cannons, often seen as the comic relief and used as a spy. Sandstorm, a red sand snake-like creature who can exhale giant clouds of sand. His kind are sometimes called sand walruses and are native to New Texas. He can also use his sand to put people to sleep or create sand creatures. Thunderstick, a stuttering robot with a directed energy cannon built into his arm. Well, basically, his arm's energy cannon. And he's like, I'm going to go get you, Bravestarr. There's Viper, a reptilianoid female villain who has the power to hypnotize people. She is the assistant to Tex Hex, but envious of his high rank among the villains. Those are the main ones in the series, but you had some other ones like Billy the Droid. You had the Dune Buggy Gang. You had Two-Faced Dingo Dan. You had Howler. He was like a coyote. You had Hogtie, which was like one of my favorite less-known characters. He was a humanoid pig dressed in a Union Army uniform. He seemed to be strong and used bolas to capture or bind his victims. So, yeah, you had him. And he was in some episodes like the one where Tex goes on trial. I think the name of that episode was Tex but no Hex, because Stampede got mad at him and took his powers away. The series, had a bunch of minor characters that were good people, like that you would see throughout the series, like a prospector named Billy Bob, who was a Carrium, who was there for the Carrium. There was Handlebar. He was a bartender with a handlebar mustache who was a former space pilot for the Rigel star system with a bright orange handlebar mustache and a Brooklyn accent. He mostly serves Bravestarr and 3030 a drink called Sweetwater. Other times he acts as a reserve law enforcement officer. He has a pet cobra steer named Rampage. Well, it's actually revealed in one of the episodes about Handlebar's past, about him being a pirate. You've got Judge J.B., who is voiced by Susan Blue. Susan Blue was also the voice of R.C. in the Transformers movie from '86, and people will know her in her human form, as I call it, as being the mother of Tina in Friday the 13th, Part 7, A New Blood. Now, I mentioned 3030 earlier, which ends up being Bravestarr's friend and deputy. But what I forgot to mention is the way that Bravestarr first met him. After Bravestarr is reunited with the shaman sends him to this Hall of the Equesteroids, which is what they call 3030's species, to get a great weapon. Well, 3030 and them end up fighting, and 3030 is losing, and the place is pretty much going to rubble, and Bravestarr says that you got to come with me, big pard, and he's like, I've been defeated. So Bravestarr has to literally punch 3030 out and run him out of there with his powers, which I'm going to talk about here in just a second. And that's when he first met 3030, and the shaman had sent him to get a great weapon. And the shaman says that I did not send you to get another toy. I sent you to get something you can trust with your life, which means that 3030 was going to be like his protector and help him and stuff. That's what the shaman had sent him after. Well, Bravestarr has 4 different kinds of powers. He has the eyes of the hawk, which enhance his vision, and can also grant him an aerial view of adjacent areas, which means he can see from overhead. He has ears of the wolf that give him superhuman hearing, the strength of the bear, which gives him superhuman strength. The speed of a puma gives him superhuman speed. Strength of the bear grants Bravestarr strength significant to destroy stone or support steel bridges, whereas the speed of the puma allows him to speeds akin to comic book characters, Quicksilver and the Flash, which means he can run real fast. So that's how he gets 3030 out in time, is that he runs out of the Hall of the Equesteroids as it's being destroyed. So what he does is pretty much he finds a friend. And when he finds a friend, you know, they have to team up and take down Tex Hex or keep him from doing what he normally does. You know, he's a bad guy, so. But anyway, Bravestarr, yeah, it lasted 65 episodes. And it's untelling where the show would have went if it had got another season. But with the fact that Filmation was closing their doors and closing down, I didn't see nothing like that was going to happen. So I done spoke of Fort Carrium and the characters of Bravestarr. And basically, there is no real episode guides that I can find that will tell you about the episodes other than their titles. I've been trying to find something like that. I should have been better prepared, but sadly I'm not better prepared on this. But I can basically tell you that if you like the Ninja Turtles cartoon, Pat Fraley, who was the voice of Krang, does quite a few voices in this show. And he's even the voice of Bravestarr. So, needless to say, I finally managed to find episode guide. Okay, we're going to go over now some of my favorite episodes of Bravestarr. Now, I don't know if this episode guide is in order. It's the Internet Movie Database. It could be. Then again, it couldn't be. But I think these episodes might be in our date order or could be in production order. I don't know, because when they was released on DVD, they released them different. But I'm going to go by the Internet Movie Database order and tell you some of my favorite episodes of Bravestarr. Well, my first favorite episode is Bravestarr's mentor turns to crime and Bravestarr must apprehend him, which is Fallen Idol. Anyway, Bravestarr is like, he was in like a school to be a galactic marshal. And this is the guy who trained him and stuff. And he was, like his idol. And just to see that he turned to crime and stuff, that really took a toll on Bravestarr. But I can't find his name of the character right now, but that was one of my favorite episodes. And then episode 3, according to this, the taking of Tessel Down 123, or 123, ghostly outlaw and Bravestarr's nemesis, Tex Hex, captures a shipment of precious ore and holds everyone there hostage. Bravestarr must stop him. That's an episode worth of checking out. Then we've got my next favorite episode was called To Walk a Mile, which is episode 7 according to this. Former Rigel 7 Marshal Lucas Conway has hung up his guns after causing an accident and is now a peaceful prospector. But when his old enemy, Two-Face, kidnaps his son Mark, Conway contacts Bravestarr and goes back into action. So in this episode, it's a man who was known for being bad who decides he wants to go good. Kind of like when a Christian gets saved and stuff and they just want to live by the book. And he's forced to do something that he don't want to do at all costs to save his son. So it means, in the title, To Walk a Mile, means don't judge somebody until you walk a mile in their shoes, because you don't know what they're going through. Well, one of my next favorite episodes was called Big 30 and Little Wimble. Young prairie person Wimble chooses 30-30 to be his temporary foster father. When Bravestarr doubts 30-30's abilities to take care of the kid, 30-30 enrolls Wimble in Miss Jenny's class at Fort Carrium. But Dingo Outlaw Howler sets a trap for Bravestarr, derailing Wimble and his classmates when they go on a field trip. So basically got 30-30 being a father figure. Now look out, little Wimble. You just got him being like a father figure, so that's a good one. One of the next favorite episodes of mine was called Eye of the Beholder. This one showed like a side of Hex that we had never seen. I mean, we know Tex Hex is evil, but this episode right here is basically kind of like Tex still has some inkling of what good and caring about somebody is. Allie Kingston plans to use petrified Carrium to make blind children see again. Tex Hex tricks the blind woman into trusting him so he can get his hands on the Carrium shipment. However, Allie is able to sense a long-repressed tender side to Tex, and he in turn is reminded of his lost love by her. So that was a really good episode of the show. Now, The Wrong Hands is about like what can happen if somebody gets their hands on like a weapon. Will they use it for good or will they use it for bad? And the warrior alien race known as Krang creates a doomsday laser weapon. Strange, it's called Krang, and Pat Fraley, or how you say his name, was also the voice of Krang in Ninja Turtles. I wonder if Pat Fraley said, well, let's call it Krang or something. Anyway, let's move on. To the next episode that I remember that I like. Trouble Wears a Badge. Bravestarr accepts to train a young, hot-headed Carson. In his arrogance, the kid causes an incident that almost leads to a war. So basically, you got these pious cops that think that they're above the law and that they're like the greatest gift to law enforcement and stuff like that. And Bravestarr basically has to put him in his place and show him that he's not. Now, this episode, I done talked about the price. Dealer, a dingo drug pusher, offers Jay a taste of spin, and soon the boy is addicted. His best friend, Brad, wants to get help, but also promised Jay not to squeal. So, he don't want to be a tattletale, but yet he wants to save his friend. So, he has to come up with if he's going to do it or not. And by the time he does it, it's too late because Jay dies. And at the end of the episode, Bravestarr's like talking about how drugs is bad and about how they can kill and there's a tombstone there and all that. The next episode that I remember being good was the day the town was taken. Tex-Hex turns the tables on Bravestarr by closing up Fort Carrion when the marshal was out rescuing J.B. and Handlebar from a pack of dingoes. So basically, Tex-Hex is taking over the town and Bravestarr's got to find a way to get back in there to save the people. Tex But No Hex is an episode where Stampede punishes Tex-Hex for his failures to stop Bravestarr and takes away his powers. He is then he is then easily arrested and sent to town to face trial. That's the one that I was talking about where I said that Hogtie was like one of the witnesses and stuff. Then you got like a Christmas type episode. Kind of like a Ghost of Christmas Past, Present, and Future deal. Like a Christmas Carol called Texas Terrible Night. Stampede is planning an attack on the town, but since it's Christmas, Shaman warns Tex-Hex that Texas Old Flame is coming to town on that very same day. So it's like Tex basically travels with the shaman like Scrooge traveled with the ghost, and he's showing him what could have been and what was and all that, which is a really good episode. The next episode that I liked was called The Little Lie That Grew. Dingo Dan the Outlaw and a member of the Coyote-like Dingo race blackmails the daughter of a jailer to free his gang. So this girl was basically going to tell a lie so that she could keep her dad from getting in trouble, the dingoes from getting in trouble or whatever, so she could save her dad. So that was a good episode. This one was a good episode too, Brothers in Crime. Orville, a shy boy with a stutter, learns that outlaws Craver and Grumble are the ones who've been robbing miners over at South Bend. The boy gets captured but befriends Grumble, who, like Orville, is just also looking for a friend. So that was a good episode. And then they was going to make a TV series called Sherlock Holmes in the 23rd Century. Well, Sherlock Holmes in the 23rd Century did get made, but it was made by a different film company. But the kind of backdoor pilot to the show, which would have been way better than the one that that was made was a two-parter on Bravestarr. And when Sherlock Holmes plummets down Reichenbach Falls, a natural time warp transports him into the year 2249. There he is patched up by Wrigley and Dr. Watson of Harley Street Hospital. They soon team up with Holmes' great-great-grandniece, yard agent McCroft Holmes. His first case is presented by Marshal Bravestarr, who is searching for a missing alien boy called Fleeter. Then Holmes, Dr. Watson, and their companions have been captured by Professor Moriarty, who has survived thanks to a spell of suspended animation and now aims to take over the entire Earth and possibly beyond using Fleeter's hypnotic singing talent. So yeah, there was going to be a series of Sherlock Holmes in the 23rd century. And it just didn't get made because Filmation, shut its doors in 89. Now, one of my next favorite episodes was New Texas Blues. Galactic Battle of the Bands Festival is being held on New Texas. Stampede gives Tex Hex the Black Widow guitar that sows discord. And the guitar kind of looks like a BC Rich Warlock kind of. So I like that episode pretty good. And I didn't tell you much about 3030's weapon earlier, but I'll have to tell you about it now so that this episode will make more sense. 3030 has this gun. It's like a blunderbuss is what it looks like. And he's always got a habit of, because 3030 is like, he gets mad and he don't want to take no crap. And he's like, well, answer them bushwhackers, Sarah. And when he's talking about answering them bushwhackers, he's talking about letting Sarah do her business. Sarah Jane's his gun. Well, in the Ballad of Sarah Jane, 30 loses his one-of-a-kind cherished gun, Sarah Jane. A young alien boy finds it and, not knowing what it is, uses it as a toy. Well, this basically is to say that about gun control or whatever. Yeah, of course, if you leave your guns laying out, then kids are going to grab them and blast away at the family dog or blast away at somebody else. But this right here was like the episode that tried to show that parents should lock up their guns to keep their kids safer. Which that was a really good episode. Then we got the episode which ended the series called Strength of the Bear. Bravestarr is surprised to have lost his spirit animal power. Shaman tells him he must face a trial in the wilderness of New Texas to renew his bond with animal spirits. Stampede and Sandstorm take this opportunity to set a trap for the Marshal in the Badlands. So basically, Bravestarr loses his powers and he has to get them back by facing like a vision quest and stuff and get them back. Well, what's odd about the Bravestarr series is that the movie came out close to the time when the series was going to end in the same year. So I don't know why they didn't make the movie first and then go from there. But basically the movie is like a prequel. Like we got prequels today, like of Star Wars and Batman and like about anything you can name. But back then, normally you had the movie before you had the series based off of it. And so they made the movie and then they made the toys. The toys were awesome. I have a Bravestarr figure. Sadly, I don't have his neutral laser, which was his gun. And I don't have his hat, and he's not in the best shape, but I have a Bravestarr action figure. They made a Bravestarr action figure. They made a Tex Hex action figure. They made Sandstorm. They made 3030. They made the Fort Carrium playset. They made these neutral lasers that was kind of like laser tag. They made these Bravestarr figures that had these backpacks on them that it was kind of like laser tag. You press a button like you was fighting Tex Hex, and like it would blast them or whatever, like the lights, like laser tag, and then its alarm would go off. They had coloring books. They had story books. They had a Halloween costume at one time. You know those Halloween costumes with the plastic mask that your face is sweaty within like 10 seconds of putting it on? Everybody from the 80s remembers those. Yeah, Bravestarr, it's just sad that it never really got a chance to take off like Thundercats did. Thundercats had 130 episodes. Bravestarr only got 65 in a movie. Now, I would like to see a live-action Bravestarr movie. That would be pretty badass to see like a live-action Bravestarr movie. Because with the day with the way effects is and stuff, that would just be awesome. Like I said in my last episode about the Thundercats, they were supposed to make a live-action movie and it never came to fruition. They should make that. But, sadly, we probably won't never see a Thundercats movie. We won't see a Bravestarr movie. That's just the way things go. They want to make crap in Hollywood, and they don't want to make something that's nostalgic that will give their fans something that they want. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the characters of Bravestarr that I forgot to mention. Angus McBride, when he was like working with Tex Hex, he could like walk and stuff. Well, Tex Hex did something where this big rock fell on him, which crippled him from the waist down, so he can't walk anymore. And Judge JB, excuse me, lighting a cigarette here, is his daughter. So then you got this woman named Molly that runs the stagecoach, and then you got Mayor Derringer, which is named after a very, very small gun. You got Commander Kane, who was a female that was once in love with Angus McBride. You've got a doctor named Doc Clayton. And that's just the way that the show was set up. They'd have like different characters normally through the week that was just didn't have big parts in the show. But JB and Fuzz, I think, was in about every episode of it that they made. You had Handlebar show up, which the way they done animation back then, they had to reuse a bunch of the animation so that they could do it so cheaply. So you'd see some repeated scenes from like earlier episodes just with different dialogue or edited together different or something like that. Well, I believe that's about all I've got to say about Bravestarr. If you get a chance, check it out. It used to be on like Hulu. It used to be on Tubi. I think that it's not on Tubi anymore. But I think that there's an official Bravestarr channel on YouTube that has all the episodes, so you might check it out there. And hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll catch you later.